This question comes from Instagram. This person asked, when you say we learn to forgive even the people who caused our trauma, does that also involve the really bad people? I thought this was an excellent question, so let's talk about it. I'm sure you've heard, forgiving someone isn't really for their benefit. It's not about atoning their sins or saying that the hurt they caused is okay. That's not it at all. It's more of an act of cutting the cord that is tying you to the trauma, to the story or the memory that angers you and hurts you again and again whenever you happen to be reminded of that time. Forgiving is wishing no more suffering to happen because of this incident. No more suffering for you and no more suffering for everyone who was involved, including the people who loved you and got hurt because you were hurt, and including the innocent bystanders who happened to watch the trauma happen and were indirectly affected by it. But forgiving isn't saying what happened to you or what that person did is okay. It's not okay. It shouldn't have happened. And saying this to yourself is important in order to cultivate discernment and boundaries. Let me give you an example from my own life. When I was a kid, my brother took me to this church because I think he didn't want to attend it alone. Anyway, at that church, I was a loner. I was so shy and awkward and self-conscious that no one wanted to hang out with me. So oftentimes I would sit by myself or go to the bathroom and sit there as long as possible and count the minutes until I could go back home. The funny thing is, I didn't have this problem when I was at school or anywhere else. I got along fine with people at school. Sure, I was on the quiet side, but I had no problem making friends and socializing when I was there. But it was only when I went to that particular church, I became really quiet and self-conscious. Anyway, week after week, I attended mainly because of my brother who wanted me there with him. And week after week, I subjected myself to that uncomfortable, embarrassing, extremely awkward situation. And years of doing this left a scar in my psyche. Because I was a kid who didn't know any better, I internalized it all, thought it was me, thought that there was seriously something wrong with me. I thought I was a loser, a social defect that people could smell from a mile away. And I thought if I could only fix myself, people there will like me. Right now, as an adult, I can think back on it objectively, and I know it wasn't me. That particular church had cliques. And there were some mean girls who looked down on people, talk about people in a snide tone, and make them feel foolish. So I wasn't the only one who was left to feel like a loner. There were several people there who couldn't really get along. Some new people would come to the church, feel the cliquey vibe, and would not attend the church again because it was so uncomfortable. And what's more is, the adults were also the same sort as well and had a bit of a mean streak. Unfortunately, because I had internalized my experience at that church, I developed social anxiety that followed me to college. And I suffered a long time afterwards. Meeting new people made me feel very self-conscious and awkward. Years later, when my spiritual awakening intensified, trauma from my life that were buried in memory or my subconscious rose to the surface, and I was forced to look at all of them one by one, go through the emotions associated with it, see it objectively, digest it, and ultimately let it go. And at this time, the trauma I had incurred at that church was also brought up to the surface to my consciousness. The healing process I was taken through was, I was shown how life looked like through their eyes. I saw that those people that did the harm weren't the big person my mind made them out to be. They were actually kids themselves. They had banded together because they couldn't stand on their own. Being mean gave these kids a false sense of power and an upper hand, when in their own private lives, things were volatile and they weren't getting the proper care or the attention they needed. And so the way they tried to hide all these issues was to take someone even more vulnerable and use their group to assert their power over them. And as I was being shown how their life looked like through their eyes, I was also shown who I was. When you're stuck in your trauma, you still see yourself as that helpless, powerless person that you were when the trauma happened. But I was shown that I am not that helpless girl anymore. I'm an adult and I've cultivated discernment and can now determine the energy of the people that doesn't align with me. So I was able to forgive my younger self for not knowing better. I forgave her for going back to that church over and over again, trying to fix myself and finally belong. And I told my younger self not to worry, that I know better now, and I won't let her suffer like that again. And I also forgave those kids at the church too. I forgave them for not knowing better, for not knowing at the time that being kind is much more powerful than being mean. I forgave them and empathized with their own private struggles that had caused them to feel mean inside. But I also said, what happened to me is not okay. The hurt that was caused is not okay. That hurt and trauma don't just affect me, but it affects everyone who loves me, everyone that is invested in my well-being, and every person on the street I pass by without making eye contact because of my social anxiety, and every person I was too afraid to get to know. That hurt affects all of us. So it's not okay. But I also know that the divine will transform that hurt and use it for something healing. Something like this video. And that's how I was guided to let go of that trauma. Alright, before I end the video, I want to say, please don't force yourself to forgive or let go before you're ready. Heck, I would even go as far as to say that you should keep hating that person who gave you that trauma as long as you want to. Anger is the first step to empowerment, so it can be beneficial more than you realize. But there will come a time when it just makes sense to not hang on to it anymore. Until then, do what feels good for you. Until next time, regards, Ray.